how we start. Yeah, baby.
32 SuperFans.
Where do the reports come from? Did you get an initial?
One Pod Vader.
That's football.
Every angle of the NFL covered.
All that kind of stuff, I get it.
This
No question about it.
is Next Fan Up.
We're going to unleash hell here in December.
Hello and welcome to the SuperFan Battles of Week 3 in the NFL. Hey everybody, Pod Vader here. No SuperFan battle for me, but we do have 3 great games to preview: the Eagles and the Lions, the Chargers and the Texans, and quite frankly, I think one of the biggest games of the week, the Ravens and the Chiefs. Are the Ravens for real? Are they contenders or pretenders? And I think even if they lose, they could still come out being contenders. It's just a matter of where are they going to rank in terms of the AFC hierarchy, and the Chiefs give them a great test that they have not yet already have. Hey, if you missed our Pigskin Pick'em show, well, we released that on Thursday, so that goes every game. We'll go through every game. We give a quick brief thought on the 16 games of the week, and we'll give you our winners and our upsets and our locks. So you want to check that out anywhere great podcasts are heard. That would be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Subscribe so that you never miss an episode, because coming tomorrow, you're going to get Saturday morning fantasy football with our good boy Josh there. He's going to have a special guest. He'll go over some of the fantasy picks of the week. And then on Monday mornings, you're going to get the Week 3 Superfan recaps. You're going to hear the thrill of victory and agony of defeat as the Superfans call in and share their thoughts on what happened in Week 3. Every now and then, you might even hear me. I might gloat a little bit. It's a horrible thing. If they lose, I will definitely call. It's not just when they win, but I will call even if they lose, and I will cry. But in the meantime, we got a few more days before we even get to Sunday. Let's hear from James and the aforementioned Josh.
Oh, hey, it is I, Josh, your Detroit Lions superfan, and I am back with a Week 3 superfan battle, and with me is none other than James, our Eagles superfan. How are you, sir?
Could be better, but no one really cares about the opponent being hurt.
Yeah, very, very true. Of course, Lions will be traveling to Philadelphia here this Sunday for a 1 p.m. kickoff with the Eagles. Lions currently undefeated, although it does feel like we have lost a game, which is basically what I kind of consider the Week 1 collapse. But yet 1-0-1 versus the Eagles, who have split their first 2 meetings of the season. Of course, going into Philadelphia, James, like you mentioned, quite a few injuries we saw in that Sunday night game. What are kind of the news and notes here from the Eagles side of things going into this Week 3 matchup with the Lions?
Well, as of right now, Deshaun Jackson is out for the next 2 weeks. So lucky you guys, you don't have to worry about a speed threat down the middle of the field of your defense. Alshon Jeffrey, his availability is unknown at this point. We'll probably have more by the time fans listen to the Thursday show. Let's see, Corey Clement, also unknown as far as his availability with shoulder separation or shoulder strain. And on defense, Tim Jernigan is also probably going to be limited in practice this week. He left Atlanta in a walking boot. So those are the big injuries right now. So when we go into Detroit, when we come home and, you all come to town, the starting lineup at wide receiver will be probably what we finished with Atlanta with. You're going to see Mac Hollins on one side, Arcega Whiteside on the other, with Aguilar in the slot. My other concern is Dallas Goedert nursing a calf strain. So we may be down to just Zach Ertz unless we pick somebody else up, because we only came into the season with 2 tight ends as opposed to 3.
Yeah, and that's I think that's going to be a huge focus for the defense is Zach Ertz, because honestly, I'm pretty sure that that Coleman will be able to handle Aguilar in the slot, so it's going to be an interesting matchup there. in my opinion, probably the matchup of the game with Coleman versus Aguilar. That's going to really dictate what the Lions will be able to get away with doing and scheming on defense. Of course, Slay will probably be able to handle one of the outside guys, but Mac Hollins not quite the legendary speed threat that Deshaun Jackson is, that's for sure. And that game has actually gone down a full 1.5 since the announcement of the Deshaun Jackson injury that he'll be unavailable. And last thing I saw, James, was that it looked like Alshon was going to be out for this game and the Thursday night game next week. So definitely concerning when the receiving corps is beat up, but at least the Eagles had basically 2 starting offenses worth of depth going in. So they're still a touchdown
that depth is being
favorite.
tested way too early in the season for my liking.
Yeah, and it goes to tell a lot when you have that many injuries, and yet your team's still favored by a whole touchdown at home. So definitely would agree with the depth being tested. But what do you think from the defensive standpoint is going to be the key here to getting a win for the Eagles this week?
Pressure on the quarterback. That's something we haven't gotten in either game. As a matter of fact, I think so far we have 1 sack on the year, maybe 2. I can't remember if we got a sack against Washington. We had to use blitz pressure to get a sack Sunday night, and that was from backup safety Sendejo coming up the middle untouched against Atlanta. The defensive front 4 is not getting any pressure, and I know Fletcher Cox is, has a toe injury that's not making him 100%, but I can't believe that the toe is hampering him that much. I mean, he's still making plays in the run game, but there's just nothing from the edge or push up the middle as far as our base front 4 getting any kind of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and that's why our secondary is getting picked apart.
I was just going to say that I didn't know if maybe that was the reason that things were getting a little tricky in the secondary for you guys. But you could argue the same thing for the Lions, is that they were having a little bit of hard time getting pressure on the quarterback here. And the D-line wasn't as good last week as we know that they can be. So it's going to be interesting. I think both teams have a lot of similarities in this matchup this week, and that it is going to come down to some major defensive line play. And on offense, I really think it's going to come down to who can move the ball through the air. I do think that both teams are going to have a hard time running the ball this week. And for that reason, I think it's going to be critical. Whoever makes the fewest amount of mistakes, I think, could end up being the team that wins. We saw that the Lions were very, very beneficial, or I should say benefited very heavily from a lot of penalties and some ill-timed turnovers by the Chargers last week. And I just don't know if they're going to get as lucky and get bailed out as much as they did last week. They're really going to need everything to go right for them again to have a chance this week. James, do you want to throw a final score prediction out there at us?
Oh, gosh. Be lucky if we score 21 points. So I'm going to say 20-17 Eagles.
All right, I'm going to do an exact carbon copy of the final score of the last time these two teams met, which was 24-23 Lions. That ended up being a very pivotal victory back in the Lions. I think that was 2016 when they met up in getting the Lions season turned around to make a playoff berth. So we're hoping that we can do the same here this week, but we definitely have a very, very tough task ahead of us against a very, very tough Philadelphia Eagles team. And James, any last final thoughts, like an X factor from this game or something that maybe we want to look out for on the Eagle side?
Getting the ground game going. I think that's something that we've gotten away from, and I know that he's preached patience. Coach Peterson has got to find creative ways to get the ground game going because it's too static right now. Against Atlanta, there was no nuance to it. And I'm not saying that everything has to be stretch plays or spread the field and run little gadget things, anything like that. But the offensive line has got to get back to form because they look completely out of sorts against Atlanta. And not taking anything away from Atlanta, they're a solid defense, but when I see this team getting, held in a running game, we can still generate 75, 80 yards rushing as a team and be held to under 50 Sunday night. It was just, I don't know, that was anemic. I don't know what that was. But that's going to be my X factor: the offensive line working as a unit and sustaining the running game.
Excellent. I'm going to go with for the Lions. I'm going to go with the linebacker play. The linebackers were surprisingly good throughout all of preseason. Jelani Tavai, our second-round pick, has been fantastic so far. And we should get Jared Davis back this week. So I know that he's been a bit of a liability in pass coverage, but if they do have him back, that allows the Lions defense to be a little bit more versatile, and that's what this team is all about. I think it's going to come in very handy if they can throw some different looks at Carson Wentz and company, and maybe get some help on Ertz and see what they can do as far as limiting him. So hopefully they're bracketing him up pretty good, and the Lions can come away with a sneaky upset. But I don't know, James. I'm keeping the expectations low, my friend. I appreciate you stopping by for the SuperFan Battle this week.
Sure thing, man. Anytime.
All right, so for those East Coasters wanting the 4:25 afternoon kickoff, we are going to have the Houston Texans visiting the Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego, and that brings us none other than our former intern, Ken the Superfan of the former San Diego, current LA Chargers. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing well. Coming into week 3, would I love to be 2-0? Sure, I would, but the Chargers have looked good, even though they have not necessarily executed well through 2 weeks. So I'm excited for this game.
Yeah, speaking of neither looking good or executing well, that's what the Houston Texans are going to bring to the table on Sunday. So I guess that's a little bit unfair. They did look pretty good against the Saints in week 1. Looked just good enough against Jacksonville to pull out the win. So they're coming in at 1-1 as well. So Ken, is Austin Eckler the real deal? And how do you think he's going to fare against what's proving to be a rather stout, at least up the middle, Houston Texans defensive front?
Yeah, I did notice that the Texans' run defense has been pretty good this year thus far, and I think that actually does bode well for Eckler in this game, but not in the run game. I think we're going to be heavily using him in the pass game. He's one of the league's best pass catchers, and if you want my honest opinion, I think Justin Jackson would be better served as the Chargers' lead back, as he's currently, I know it's a very, very small sample size, but he currently is leading the entire league in yards per carry.
Well, I'll chalk that up to something I definitely did not know. Austin Eckler definitely worries me. Similar to Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara did not have the Alvin Kamara all capital letters with exclamation marks game, but he had a very serviceable game against the Texans. And then Leonard Fournette. If Leonard Fournette had not been coached by Doug Marrone, I would have been much more fearful of him. Fortunately for me, though, Doug Marrone still coaches the Jacksonville Jaguars as of today, so there's not much to worry about on that front. Something else that the Texans have been surprisingly competent with has been their secondary. Phillip Rivers, does he have any of his original receiving options? I know Hunter Henry's down. Keenan Allen is down with his annual injury. So how do you like Pip Rivers' chance against the Texans defense?
I wasn't aware that Keenan Allen was actually injured. As far as I've seen, I think he is healthy. So it seems. I know Mike Williams has been nicked up, but he actually
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was confusing your other often injured wide receiver.
Yes, Mike Williams. He's often on the injury report, but actually I looked at the injury report for Wednesday today, and he was a full participant. And I know he only caught 4, I think, balls last week, but he really did flash signs of Randy Moss. So it's a bummer to hear that the Texans have a decent secondary, but Keenan Allen showed last week against Darius Slay that elite secondaries aren't necessarily the answer to the Chargers' attack. But furthermore, when I saw the schedule come out a couple months ago, I actually had this game circled, and I got a little bit excited about it because we've got 2 players on the Chargers, Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, who are licking their chops when they see that Texans offensive line. 10 sacks allowed within 2 weeks. And if they don't figure out a way how to slow those guys down, whether it be a consistent run attack